Trent Henry, our guest, looking so forward to it. This guy has so much knowledge in the talent space. So I'm not going to even try to give the list of everything he's done. I'm going to just hand it off to Trent. And Trent, if you could just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and then let's just jump into it.
Well, first of all, thanks, Jack. It's great to be here with you today. I'm Trent Henry. I am the Global Vice Chair of Talent for EY. I'm in charge of kind of developing and executing the strategy for an organization that has 400,000 people operating in 150 very complex countries around the world. Jack, but I want to be honest and humble right up front. I am not an HR consultant by trade, so I've been in this role for just over 5 years. It's been an amazing experience, and we'll talk more about that. Prior to stepping into this role, I was actually the chairman and CEO of EY Canada, so one of the Canadian member firms, one of the large member firms at EY. And over my 30-some year career, I've lived in 5 different cities around the world, including the US and Canada, and done lots of different things. And I'm sure we'll get into that as we get deeper into the discussion.
Yeah, that's amazing. So with that background, I mean, you have such a vast knowledge of what's happening in the marketplace. What are you seeing now in terms of hiring, in terms of the job market, in terms of the psyche of job seekers?
Well, first of all, I think, Jack, from an outside-in perspective, people have a lot to absorb right now, right? There's lots going on in the world. It started a couple of years with COVID. Then we've seen kind of prevalence of kind of geopolitical issues around the world. And now we're seeing some, concerning numbers around the economy in the U.S. specifically. If people who are following closely the banking situation, that's creating some anxiety and stuff. But I think these are all cycles. My own belief is they're all manageable. And fundamentally, I see, the continued role of kind of technology in all things. And of course, we started this great discussion about, things like generative AI, ChatGPT. You saw Microsoft's announcement with Copilot, for example. These things are all driving, potentially really great changes in productivity. And, particularly in developed markets, productivity has been a big issue for a long time. And so I think this is really starting an interesting discussion about, the skills required, the business strategies, and of course, the impact to society around, just AI, the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you know what I mean.
What do you think for AI in the sense that, there's a study from Goldman Sachs where 300 million people are going to either lose their jobs or degraded. I don't know if those things are just clickbait or is it real? And then the World Economic Forum just came out with not a 300 million, but also kind of saying here's going to be the winners and losers. So for people who are watching this, listening to this, is there something they could do to build up their skills, maybe to learn about AI, to maybe reposition themselves, pivot, reinvent themselves? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I would say there are many better forecasters than me in terms of the impact on kind of job losses. And so my kind of quick answer in this is, will jobs be impacted and will there be job losses? And yes, of course there will be. But it really is kind of a yes, but Jack, because I think, again, I think one of the real mega trends, at least in the developed markets, is labor scarcity. And when I talk where I have clients around the world and I look at the EY value proposition, when I look at the workforce planning, which is probably the most common question I get from boards right now, what are you doing from a workforce planning perspective? The need to upskill an organization has never been more critical. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, people talked about the need to, quote, double the investment in learning and skills so that they would really have the capabilities to drive that forward. I've seen no recent data that tells me what that multiple is now, but it's much larger than it was 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm very optimistic on the future, but you hit the nail on the head. I mean, people are going to have to really adopt a mentality of lifelong learning, upskill themselves and kind of drive for that curiosity. That doesn't mean, though, that some of these legacy leadership skills in particular aren't going to be important. In fact, I would argue many of them are going to be even more important going forward. I mean, coming through COVID, planning the future of work, planning the return of work in the early days after COVID, we've just seen the criticality of the right leadership behaviors, things like empathy and stuff that we didn't talk about that much, 4 or 5 years ago. We talk about, motivating and inspiring. But I now think just understanding the unique circumstances, understanding, the social equity, kind of the DEI context, and then more importantly, understanding that people are individuals. And Jack, what you need versus what Trent needs versus what other people needs, you shouldn't make any assumptions about that. What you need to do is design a value proposition to be kind of diverse and understand, as we all make this quote pivot to skills, that we're providing an environment where people feel great about their upskilling opportunity, the opportunity to build relationships, the opportunity for kind of great mentoring, and frankly, the opportunity to be cared for too. I think that is probably more important than ever. So, as we go through our own leadership assessment, making sure in the first and foremost, our leaders have the skills they need to be great leaders. How do you demonstrate empathy, right? How do you create kind of teams in these kind of hybrid and virtual environments? And I think that's got to be an evolving piece of work in science that helps organizations as we move forward.
So would it be a combination of both the company and the individual to learn these new skills? Would the company come to a person, let's say, to say, hey, Jack, we think you can kind of get to the next level, but you really have to work on maybe your soft skills, your communication skills, what have you, or do the workers maybe have a responsibility to themselves to say, you know what, I really want to do X. So maybe I have to go online and find some coursework, or maybe ask my boss, hey, how can you, if I go back to school, can I learn such and such? Is it a combination of those? How does that work?
It is a combo, but I think the lens is slightly different. So let me see if I can explain this, Jack. So first of all, from an organizational level, as I said, we have 400,000 people, more than ever. And this is not dissimilar to what other companies are doing. We do much more advanced workforce planning, right? So we try our best to look in our crystal ball, imagine the skills we need to kind of serve our clients and drive the organization forward. Then we can map out at least the skills need. And the reality is kind of those skills are changing dramatically. I was just looking at some of the LinkedIn stats. And in the last 3 months, the top 5 skills in terms of LinkedIn that they're looking for have all changed. And now the top 5 are all generative AI skills. So that was not a key indicator 3 months ago. It is today. That's how fast things are changing. So it makes workforce planning hard. But at least at EY, we know, okay, here's our platform. Here's the skills we believe we need. And we either you can rent, build, or buy these skills, right? So you either hire them, you can access, a gig or contractor workforce. And then fundamentally, we believe the best opportunity is to upskill. Best example I can give you there is sustainability. If you look at people looking for sustainability skills around the world, and it's been 4 or 5 months since I looked, but last time I checked, there were about 7 times as many open opportunities as there were sustainability skills available in the world, right? So your only option there is really to kind of upskill aggressively and then define the right programs and curriculum. So I think that's the organization's kind of fundamental responsibility. And then coming back to the leadership element, making sure that our leaders and our counselors, Jack, have both the tools and the mindset to kind of, force these discussions with their counselees, make sure people are challenging themselves. Again, not a one size fits all. It's very much an it's yours to build, which is our employee value proposition, right? And make sure you're satisfying that. Now, on the employee side, what I tell a lot of people, including my own children, is they really need to, demonstrate curiosity. Curiosity at all things in life, not just in work, in their communities and with all things that they do. So we have a very explicit ask for our people to, we've made huge investments in our badges program, which are those micro credentials that we think are going to be very, very important. As far as I'm aware, Jack, we're the only organization in the world that offers 3 EY master's programs. And this morning, we just had our graduation of our 5th cohort class for what we call the EY Technology MBA by Hult University, which runs that program. So it's the only triple accredited MBA program in the world. It's focused on the technology skills. And of course, we offer that, but it's up to our people to respond and to really upskill. I'm thrilled at the uptake. I mean, we have over 300,000 badges awarded now in recent years. And we just had another cohort of 51 technology MBAs graduate this morning. So again, It fosters a culture of curiosity, but the onus is then on the individual to kind of take advantage of these opportunities and upskill themselves. I think that's going to be really important as organizations kind of chart the path forward. But individuals need to find access, whether it's through your employer or through other means, to make sure you're constantly skilling.
So I love what you're saying, because it really, in a way, empowers, the worker to say, hey, I'm not going to, I can't be complacent, and I should reach out and speak to my manager, my boss, supervisor, whomever, to say, hey, I want to how do I get in that program? How do I get in that, MBA program with Holt? And, because that'll be a great additional tool in my kit. Or maybe if they don't have something, I imagine maybe bring it up to management, say, hey, I'd like to do such and such, or learn about, AI. Is there maybe a certain program that we could put together at E&Y so, we could be more competitive?
Yeah, so I love the way you frame that. And let me kind of add one little nuance to it. I mean, if I had a dream, we would be the first organization that truly had a well-developed technology-led employee marketplace, where you could understand as an organization the entirety of the skills you have. So in our 400,000 workforce and our contract workforce, what skill does EY have? And then on the experience side and then the client side, what are the client experiences and the client opportunities? And you could match those up. So, the next Jack Kelly comes along and says, boy, Trent, I would love to get some experience working in a sustainability project, in X, Y, and Z. Then I could look at the database. And so not just put the onus on the employee, but also have a nudge in the system in terms of, link to the staffing, link to the experiences. And I think that's when you can start to really unleash the power of the data strategy, which I think is going to be critical for all organizations, but also then linking that directly to the experience of your people and the skills that both the people and the organization need to serve our clients properly.
Yeah, I don't mean to go on a tangent, but like when you mentioned the 400,000, how, like, to me, it sounds so overwhelming. Like, how do you guys keep track of 400,000 people? And I think you mentioned that, what is it, like 100,000 were hired over the last year. Like, those numbers are huge. How does that work? How do you keep track of all that?
Well, they really are. I mean, look, we've made some foundational investments in our kind of core HR systems. So in the first instance, our core HR systems are really solid. So we know all kind of the information we need to know about our people. I think, Jack, the next iteration, I think what all organizations are trying to do then is map to that a skills ontology that makes sense, so that the organization fundamentally understands the skills it has at its power. And I think that's a real interesting field of study, because sometimes people think about skills too narrowly. Just look at the sustainability example I gave you. In my example, there were 7 open positions for every kind of one sustainability person available. But the reality is, to fill that gap, there's lots of people who have 80% of the capability, but not 100%. So then how do you address that kind of 20% capability gap? And I think great organizations are going to develop the framework and the skills to do that. So we have many badges now in sustainability, and we actually have a master's in sustainability, which again is an organizational first, so people can upskill and actually get an accredited master's kind of in sustainability. So that's how you close gaps like that. But we're very proud of the fact, I mean, you asked me about kind of labor trends earlier. I mean, our fiscal year end is June 30th. So last year end, so the year ended June 30th, 22, we hired 160,000 people. Year to date, as of April, we've hired 120,000. So we probably won't hit quite the 160. But Jack, the other thing you're seeing with these labor stats, and again, I talk to my CHRO counterparts regularly, is retention has changed dramatically, right? So we came through this period with a great resignation. And frankly, from a learning perspective, that was a great period of time to just look at the data, spend some time with your employees, understand, okay, why were people making choice decisions? Why were they fundamentally reframing their career, their choices, et cetera? But now you map forward, and pretty quickly again, you see that retention just driving up. And many organizations now are approaching, all-time highs in terms of retention. So for us to, build this momentum and hire that many people, I think is just an incredible story. But it's not unique to EY, right? When you look at all the press that technology's got in terms of its recent layoffs, I
Mhm.
mean, again, Jack, they have had unprecedented hiring for 24 months. And they've got, in many cases, quite limited hiring. Now, I think it's really important leaders have very authentic discussions about the reason they're making correlations to the headcount, right? Kind of adjusting headcount down in certain markets. Those are the realities of kind of the business trends. But I think, keeping humans at the center, being authentic as you can. And I think the other interesting trend right now is most of these people getting laid off, and I stress most, are finding new opportunities quite quickly. So that just, strengthens what I said earlier about kind of labor scarcity and a trend I think we're going to continue to see. So again, platform for employees to really think about, okay, there's going to be incredible opportunities out there. I will be much better positioned if I invest in myself on the future skills that I need. And then frankly, really assess and make sure they're utilizing the leadership skills they already have. If you're a great collaborator, if you're a great communicator, if you're a great people developer, Jack, that's going to matter in the next generation and probably more than ever.
In terms of when you mentioned about tech, this might sound a little crass, but I imagine because about 300,000 tech people were laid off between 2022 and 2023, in a way that bodes well to get that talent that maybe you couldn't have before. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, look, I think we learned through COVID that, talent is kind of very fungible. I mean, people have lots of opportunities these days. And so I think, employer brand is going to matter in terms of kind of winning the war on talent. And so, again, what we're seeing, at least in the developed markets, is most people getting laid off are able to get redeployed relatively quickly right now. And so that is good news. And so progressive CEOs, although more measured because of the economic uncertainty, are really asking themselves, okay, what are the areas of differentiation where we critically need these new and evolving skills? And how do we either, rent, build, or buy those skills? So you're right, with those kind of layoffs at that magnitude, they may not all be able to absorb, but we're seeing many examples at EY within our clients where we are aggressively targeting those skills and trying to onboard them because we know, again, through the next iteration, those skills are going to be really, really important. So again, pretty unique time. We haven't seen this kind of trend in quite some time. And look, I think, organizations are being more cautious than they were 12 months ago for sure in their hiring. But the questions they ask me aren't that they're not hiring, it's how do we get more measured? How do we get more specific? And I think that's where the role of AI, I think, is really starting to help organizations, help target the specific skills. I mean, we're doing a lot of work with the AI ecosystem right now to help us, really define, Jack, okay, at a greater level, what are the skills we're trying to hire? How are those identified in the marketplace? How do you track them with AI? And then how do we use that in our skills database? So we're using really kind of market-based skills and trying to attract those marketplace skills into an organization that understands technology, understands careers, and understands experiences. And I think that's kind of the really kind of fun part for it too. And, along the same lines too, I think we think a lot about the skilling. So for example, I mentioned our EY Tech MBA celebration, and we actually did that in the metaverse this morning, which was fun. But when we launched this program a few years ago, we said, look, for our organization, it's really kind of a 3F strategy. First of all, it's got to be future focused, because what we found with the traditional bricks and mortar skills, and again, we love the bricks and mortar skills, so don't misinterpret this, but we really needed future focused skills. So we have a team that meets monthly to identify the trends, what are the new skills we have. So we already have batches for these 5 generative and AI skills I mentioned are the hottest skills on LinkedIn right now, right? So that's the first step. The second one, it's got to be free to all EY people, because we really want to kind of democratize the access to skills and make sure this is kind of open to kind of all EYers. And third, for DE&I perspective and in other reasons, we want it to be as flexible as possible, because really this is about creating a culture of curiosity and lifelong learning. So, Jack, if you want to come into EY, and I talked to one person who started the EY Tech MBA his first day here, he graduated this morning, kind of 24 months later. So he's been hard at work, kind of driving this forward. On the other range, we had a 50-year-old partner just completed, and she took 4.5 years to do it. She's got elder care responsibilities and other responsibilities as a partner. And so she said, Trent, the great thing is I didn't have to do this in 18 or 24 months. You provide us the platform to do this. So I've still done the upskilling. I love the program. And of course, Jack, from my perspective, I've got two amazing advocates now for skilling. I've got this young person who just started the program his first day, and I've got this 50-year-old leader who's just so excited about what she's learned and kind of what she wants to do next. So I think that's great.
That's awesome. And just to give people context, and I neglected to ask you at the onset, but maybe could you share a little bit about the type of roles that are at E&Y? Because when I hear E&Y, my first thinking is audit, accounting, but it's much more than that. Can you share for people who are interested in EY, like, hey, what do you have? What type of opportunities? Where are they? Are you going to say all in Canada or at other places too?
Yeah. So look, Jack, I think first of all, our recruiting team will be incredibly pleased you offered me the chance to say this. So look, we have 4 businesses around the world. They're 4 great businesses. So we have our assurance practice, which we, house our audit practice. We're, one of the biggest and best brands in the audit business around the world. That's been a terrific business for 150 years, but being radically disrupted with AI and technology. And so a lot of new skills coming into that business, but that's a great business. We are the world's largest and best tax business around the world. We have tax professionals in 150 countries delivering, very complex solutions from kind of tax planning and compliance to, kind of full outsourced technology solutions for our clients around the world. Again, another business is being kind of disruptive, very aggressively by governments and other folks right now. Then, of course, we've got our consulting business, which includes business consulting and technology consultants. We have over 70,000 technology consultants in the business now. And so talk about kind of a change when people think about EY. I mean, we do some of the most, complex technology in the world now, accessing the ecosystem with our great alliances with people like Microsoft, for example. So these are very exciting to us. And then finally, we've got a really exciting kind of build in our strategy and transactions business. And so we've been involved in some of the largest transactions in the last kind of 20 years around the world. We've built out a world-class strategy business as well. So we do the kind of front end, all the kind of transformation and right through kind of the outsourcing end to end. So I think that's kind of really kind of a synthesis of the 4 businesses overall. But within that, Jack, and this is where it really gets interesting, and that's where it comes back to the AI and kind of the skills ontology that we've developed with some of the ecosystem. I mean, underpinning all these, if you look at technology consulting, for example, we've developed detailed career frameworks and skilled ontology for all the jobs we see in technology consulting. I'm not going to try to take you through that, but if you look at cyber, for example, which is a really kind of growing and evolving area, there are, 11 different levels of kind of cyber skills in the organization. And we've got kind of development plans and skilling kind of for all of those through our kind of EY badge platform, which I think is really exciting. So again, it's a very diverse, very kind of complex organizations in some respects. And that's why we think kind of the role of kind of data and technology to piece this all together to deliver the right skilling and employee experience will really be kind of a differentiator for us right when we go forward. To make it simple for your listeners, I mean, one of the best examples we've got is kind of on the recruiting front. So we have kind of some AI tools. So for example, you can go on to ey.com. Jack Kelly can upload his CV, and based on the words in your CV, it will match your CV to the open jobs that exist at EY, and then give you the path to make that application, give you some coaching. You can talk to a chatbot. So again, that's kind of technology at work. And people say, well, why does that matter? Well, first of all, it gives us great data because we have, up to 1 million open applicants on our system at every one time. We have 4 million people apply to EY each and every year. But we have kind of 1 million active applicants at any one time. And so we can understand, okay, from a skills perspective, kind of what's out there, what kind of questions are they asking us? And then to give people kind of constant feedback. And I think this really helps our kind of employer brand and really kind of democratizes the access to employment at EY, right? Because, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter kind of what your background is. All we're doing is linking your CV, to our skills. and try to find you a connection into EY. So we think it's going to be well, we know it's already been a great differentiator. Look at the number of people we've hired in the last 20 or 22 months. And we don't see that momentum slowing down.
And for yourself, if you don't mind my asking, like, how did you get to where you are? Like, what's your backstory?
I think I tell my children all the time. I mean, look, the stars need to align, but funny, I come from a single parent home. I was fortunate enough, my mom was a university professor, and my four siblings and I all have kind of multiple degrees, and education was at the very root of it. We come from a pretty humble background, but education was what was prioritized. And I think it created a lifelong curiosity, honestly, Jack. So when I look at my own opportunities, I was willing to put myself out there. As I said before, I've moved 5 times with the firm. I didn't have a master plan, right? I didn't plan these all out. It wasn't always kind of upward mobility. My career has been a little bit more like a jungle gym. And I tell people all the time, that's okay. I mean, what's really worked well for me in hindsight, and it wasn't planned enough or well enough, but I did get an incredible diversity of experiences working in different markets, working in different businesses, and working with different people. And I think the best example I could give you, Jack, is people often say, like, Trent, you were the chair and CEO of the Canadian firm, you kind of ran a complete business, why did you jump into HR? And I think at the time, Jack, it was funny, I was going off on this great trip to Silicon Valley with a contingent from Canada, just to look at kind of, how US and Canada would work together on AI going forward. And we spent some great time at Google and Facebook and Tesla and the other kind of big technology companies in the Valley. And we had their CEOs there. We had some great dialogues. And I remember Eric Schmidt standing up at the end of it. And I asked Eric a question about, you're at Alphabet, you're at Google. I mean, you've got this incredible employer brand. And he stopped me right there and he said, Trent, that's an interesting comment you make. He said, 10 years ago, Google hired whoever they wanted. He said, now we're seeing just the competition for the talent is just so intense that, unless we win the war on talent, we won't kind of continue to have kind of the market leading position. So right there and then I said, you know what, I'm going to jump into this role full speed. I'm going to accept this role. And Jack, it's probably the most aggressive learning I've had at any stage of my career. I mean, to lead the EY talent agenda is a privilege. But if you just think about where we are with generative AI right now, all the disruption we went through with COVID, kind of rethinking kind of the future of work, it's just been the most incredible opportunity. So again, as you can probably tell, I'm quite optimistic about the future opportunities. I think the world will get through kind of these mega cycles. And I think I'm not worried about kind of what AI will do. I think it will radically change many of the jobs that exist, but I think it's going to create more opportunity on the other side. And as long as people are thinking progressively about the skills that they need, and I do worry a little bit. I think as a society, we have to make sure that access to education is paramount. We've got to make sure we kind of democratize those opportunities. Everybody's got the access to develop these skills. But again, that's an area where actually technology will probably help, not hinder, at least over the long term.
It's great. You got to bear with me because earlier I mentioned I'm in the suburbs, and I don't know if you hear it now. Of course, the leaf blowers are out there making all this noise. So we'll edit that out. So I'm sorry for that. This goes with the territory. Hopefully it's not too disruptive, but I want to go back. I love the fact about using AI in terms of, finding and searching for a job, because it sounds like what you're saying is, let's say I want to apply for it, right? And I think I want to be an accountant, but then perhaps based on the conversations I have with the AI, it may determine, well, Jack has more people skills and he has different skills that, yes, if you want to be an accountant, that's great. But it seems that you have the skill set that might be better for, let's say, marketing or sales or something else. So to me, just hearing that's kind of a game changer in of itself, because it just upends the whole way we all think about interviewing. It's like, I'm interviewing for X job and it has to be X job. But it sounds like what you're saying, by using AI in a way, you could just flip it. It's like, okay, wait a minute, let's really find out for the candidate where their skills are, what they're best at, and then give them the chance to see that. And I imagine you could do the same thing internally with your workforce to see, what skills do we have? Are we best utilizing it? Maybe before we hire from the outside, we could promote from within because we could see, hey, these skills are transferable to a different role. So that to me seems really pretty exciting, right?
So it really is. I mean, I think recruiting generally has been much too linear in the past. And I think what AI has allowed us to do, Jack, and you nailed it, and it's a term I refer to as the fungibility of the workforce, both externally and internally. So in your example, your external EY, you apply with this tool, and it recommends jobs that you may have never thought of based on the data points in your CV. So that's starting to open up a whole new world. And what fungibility refers to is, Jack, maybe you have 80% of the skills. Traditionally, you need 100% of the skills, but we don't believe you need 100%. If you have 70 or 80%, we can upskill you on the rest. And that could open up a whole new career and a whole new vision. And so we do hope it's provocative for people coming into the EY world to say, hey, I applied for, I put my CV up. I was thinking I'd be an accountant, and I can still be an accountant, but I could do a master's in sustainability and kind of lead the world's efforts in terms of building sustainability businesses and embedding sustainability. On the internal mobility front, we're even more excited. I mean, our people, through a program we call Mobility for You, any EY person, including Trent, can upload his or her CV into this website, and it will, based on the jobs that are advertised currently, identify other roles that you would be capable of applying for within the UI world. So that's really walking the talk on democratizing the experiences of the firm. I talked earlier about kind of democratizing the access to skills. So all EY people for free can do these master's programs, can do the badges, they can do kind of other program within the firm. Kind of through these and other efforts, we're democratizing the experiences too. So it doesn't matter where you work in the world, you can apply through these portals as long as you've got a mobility mindset. And that could involve, by the way, a physical move, but it doesn't necessarily have to. With hybrid work these days, a lot of our work can be done virtually type thing. There are different ways to kind of find these experiences. And so we love that about the system. And like any AI measure, Jack, I mean, we're learning all the time, right? So what I know now compared to what I know 6 months ago, the quantity of the data, what I know about the applicants and the applicant tracking on the website is just, vastly more superior than I knew 6 months ago. So as I advise the business on the workforce planning, we're just so much better informed. And then hopefully over time can deliver even greater experiences to people who kind of join EY, because that's what it's all about. If we can create the right skills and deliver the right experiences for our people, we're very comfortable that our clients will be, kind of thrilled with this level of service. The capability of workforce and the future of EY will be bright.
See, that sounds to me so awesome from the outside, because on so many measures, no particular order. So let's say for diversity and inclusion, right? Where if you see where the person went to college or where they live, there could be some maybe bias or some, unconscious bias or what have you. But if you're just based on the skills that the person has, it just levels the playing field, I'd imagine, right? Where now you're not kind of judging a person where they're from, where they went to school, and that just purely on their abilities and their skills and what they bring to the table. And I'd imagine because of the size and scope of your organization, the law of large numbers, there's just more opportunities. So like you have that too. So this way if you had a smaller company, it's harder. There's only so many spots. But when you have, 400,000 or 500,000, spots, I mean, not all, I mean, you have those amount of employees, they're not all open. But when you just have 10,000, 100,000, that gives so much more opportunity for people to say, hey, I can kind of go in all these different directions.
Yeah, and look, we don't use these tools to select people out either, right? So tools are just used to kind of expand the opportunity and expand your thinking. So you articulated it really well, Jack, because it does just give you some thoughts and ideas about expanding your horizon, right? It's not about limiting your options or selecting Jack out. So I think, organizations, most have been pretty mindful of kind of the downside of AI. And so, with our teams, including our DE&I team, we're very focused on that to make sure we're not selecting people out based on that criteria, that we're actually expanding the universe of experiences and then that person work the system and work through conditional practices to make sure there's a good match, and hopefully those things work. But you know, the the real test of the day is, okay, what is the applicant experience like? And so again, and the world is measuring everything in much more granular detail, as you know. On our last survey, 95% of the candidates, and keep in mind, we have 4 million applicants a year. 94 or 95% said.
Wait, how many applicants a year?
4 million. 4 million. So 94 and 95% said their experience is exceptional in terms of the candidate experience. And Jack, I fundamentally don't believe you couldn't do it with technology alone, and you couldn't do it with people alone. So, my evolving thesis is the role of AI and these very user-friendly tools, together with the human element, are really creating that differentiated factor. So again, careful what I'm saying, because it's still very much a humans at the center approach, but it's using enabling technology to drive the right productivity. And fundamentally then, from a design experience, making sure the user experience, in this case, the employee experience or the applicant experience, is phenomenal. And, from an employee perspective on the recruiting side, because I know you know that area so well, I mean, our recruiters' experience has been dramatically enhanced too, because they don't spend as much time kind of doing the mundane work. I mean, I guess our real wish for our employees and our applicants is, they can do meaningful work. And meaningful work doesn't mean, searching databases and doing that kind of stuff, particularly when AI and these other tools can really kind of advance that and then make the work much more meaningful in terms of the actual human encounter.
I can tell you firsthand from being a recruiter, heading up a search firm, going and just wading through resume after resume after resume. Plus, when you submit candidates and companies want just a cookie cutter, you have to have exactly X, Y, Z. And if you don't, sorry, next. It's torturous. And I think this new world where I'm really excited about this conversation, because the more I can visualize kind of the next iteration of where we're going, particularly with you guys, where you're going, it's going to just change it, and it makes it better. Because I can't tell you how many times I would have great candidates, but they would be thanks, but no thanks, because they didn't have 100% matching, and they didn't bother to see the skills. They didn't bother to really delve deeply to see what else could cross over. It's just, nope, you don't have, such and such, sorry, goodbye. And it hurts both the company for losing out, and it hurts the candidate, and then it hurts the brand of the company, because they're like, I could do that job, and now you didn't give me a chance. So this sounds really cool, because it's on one level, people hear AI and they say, oh my God, I'm gonna lose my job. The other side, it's like, wait, no, this could be super helpful for people and make it a much better experience.
Well, I think that's right. And again, I think the guidepost for us, or kind of the North Star, is, look, we need to make this true pivot to skills. But underlying that, and Jack, you're absolutely right about this, you have to deliver an employee experience that is really meaningful, right? And differentiated to really create that stickiness and to strengthen the employer brand over time, so that we can continue to recruit, these kind of new and evolving technologies, but also find room for the traditional skills that are still really important, still a core of our business. And I think, the magic is where that meets in the middle, to create a diverse workforce, make sure your organization has those skills. And again, I think, most organizations are thinking through this by industrializing the workforce planning. Some are further ahead on skilling, and, many are struggling with kind of the careers and experience side of things. So that's what we try to bring together at EY. Admittedly, it's a journey. And again, I think things like the current iteration of technology changes is just driving such acceleration in the need to get this done more quickly.
This is not a fair question to ask, but where do you, because you don't have a crystal ball, none of us have a crystal ball. Where do you think we're headed in this? I could just tell you the States, because I'm not sure what's happening in Canada, but I can tell you in the States, we're a mess here. Like, we hate each other. Everyone's arguing and fighting all the time. People are miserable. People are anxious. People are stressed out. And, and they bring that to work. And so it's a really weird kind of vibe here. Then put on top of it, high interest rates, high inflation, high cost. it's almost this like toxic brew. Like, I don't know if that's going on in Canada, but you have any sites, any like how this will play out? It can't last forever. Or you think this is just a temporary thing? Just we've always had this throughout society. The pendulum swings both ways, and we're just in this zone right now.
Look, the geopolitical and economic issues we've dealt with before,
Mhm.
right? And so this is the 2023 version of geopolitical issues. This is the 2023 version of the economic cycle. Again, I said up front, I'm an optimist by nature. We will work through these issues, and we will go through this, I think, and hopefully come out stronger. Although kind of different people would have different views on that. I think what it means for me is we have to fundamentally rethink kind of time and space and kind of what's best for people. And I think people have been overworked. We've seen a prevalence of, in the workforce of, mental health issues, kind of led by kind of lack of flexibility, not understanding kind of what, psychological safety is, kind of not having leaders who can kind of demonstrate empathy. And, if your leaders, for example, aren't in a good place themselves, how are they going to lead an organization that is kind of dealing with all these external factors? So the reality is, despite the advances in data stuff, the world moves so fast. You're never going to have perfect data. So you have to make, decisions without kind of perfect data. And I think that scares a lot of leaders and scares a lot of folks. But, at its heart, particularly because you and I both sit in developed markets, I mean, this trend around labor scarcity is real. And again, I see it all the time. Organizations I talk to, they are still trying to find the right skills and the right people to kind of move this forward. So people are going to have to upskill and do all these things, but there's going to be many and many different opportunities going forward. Yes, a lot of traditional jobs are going away, but the skills inventory is continuing to expand, Jack. And I think, within that, there's going to be many great opportunities for, many people to have kind of great careers.
I appreciate it. And I'm glad you brought up about, mental health and emotional well-being and wellness, because I know in the past I spoke with Jeannie Carlisle and Frank, and he's going to hate me because I can't remember his last name, the first chief wellness officer,
Ian Petra.
which is great, which is, I think, so important, because I think coming out of, the pandemic, to me, in my lifetime, like I grew up in a place in Brooklyn before it became cool and hip that is now. It was just a very lower socioeconomic area. And if I brought up talking about mental health, I'd get beat up. They're like, what are you talking about? Mental health? What's wrong with you? Fast forward, to me, it seems the first time really in the workforce post 2020 is that we're talking about it now, and it's helpful. And you guys are, I think we're up and ahead of the curve in terms of putting it together. And I think for people and workers, that's such a help when they know, okay, I can get psychological safety. I know I'm gonna my manager be empathetic, and you don't have to suffer from a bully, from a micromanaging boss. And that's one of, I think, a great thing that we've learned and we found out, and I hope we keep that.
It really is. It's one of the great learnings. I would admit, though, Jack, I mean, look, it's not a one size fits all. We have business in 150 countries around the world. And if you think about, the cultural attitudes, the different kind of infrastructure challenges, the different way in which healthcare is delivered around the world, and then what's kind of an employer's responsibility to kind of work together in that ecosystem and stitch together solutions. And so, what we've started is, I think, a great dialogue. And we've got some amazing pieces of work around the world that provide, apps or kind of physical counseling, the upskilling to both leaders, counselors, and staff in terms of, how to provide access, how to create psychological safety, how to eliminate kind of bias in the workplace, for example. But it is a journey. I mean, again, the world is a complex place. It's not a one size fits all. And what I encourage the teams to do is experiment a little bit. We've got different apps in different parts of the world because, again, the access to healthcare can be very different, particularly the access to mental health resources. And so, I get the craziest questions from time to time, Jack. People will say, Trent, I've got $1,000 left on my fitness credit for the year. Should I buy a treadmill? And I kind of joke. I say, well, I know some people use them and some people use them as a laundry basket. So I'm not going to tell you whether you should use a treadmill, but I'm glad you're kind of focused and say, what do I love to do? What would help my health and wellness? And then, our responsibility, I think, in addition to providing access to those resources, is to help create the environment where people do have time and space. And I think that's something that organizations didn't do well necessarily through COVID. I think people started to react, but the old way of kind of measuring, kind of employee success was, how many hours did they spend in the office, or kind of presenteeism. It then became, well, how much time are they on screen? Is their screen always green? Can I get a hold of them? I mean, that's just a different way of measuring presenteeism. And frankly, it's lazy and not a good metric for the health index and the productivity of your workforce. So again, I think we're rethinking, the KPIs that matter, rethinking the recognition that needs to go along with that. So how do you recognize great counselors to do this, right? That, work with Jack and Trent, make sure they've got the time and space, make sure they're supported, for example, to do their EY Tech MBA or their Masters of Sustainability or a badge on inclusive leadership, right? So I think those are the things that will really make a difference at the end of the day. And I think all organizations are struggling just to kind of make that transition and get there. But it's a really important journey, and it's fun, and it's so rewarding because your employees tell you. I mean, we have a very active employee listening campaign, and I love it because we have a fairly young workforce. I think 2/3 of our workforce, Jack, are probably under 35 years of age, many of them in their 20s. And the great thing about this demographic is, they will tell you what they want. And I think that just creates a great dialogue, and it gets translated into needs. So, over the last 12 months, we've changed some of our benefits around the world in direct feedback from our people to say, hey, we want more of, specifically, they did want more access to mental health resources, for example. So in many of our jurisdictions where that didn't exist, we provided ways to provide access to mental health practitioners.
It's interesting. My kids are Gen Zs, and they definitely have a different attitude than me, a Gen Xer, and for sure for boomers. And they definitely tell me if you see this too. They're very much more into a job that has meaning, fulfillment, purpose, maybe involved with a social cause aspect. Whereas I think, and I don't want to just label every generation a certain way, but I know for myself, in my cohorts as Gen X, we didn't even think in those terms. It's like, okay, it's a job. I got to do my job, and that's it. It never occurred to us like, all right, we should have a purpose and meaning. But that's healthy, right? That's a good thing that they're asking for and wanting that, right?
Well, it's amazing. And I can tell you from those 280,000 people we hired over the last kind of 22 months, they tell us one of the main reasons they join us is because of our purpose. So EY's purpose is building a better working world, which kind of resonates both internally and externally. But let me give you a real life example. We have an EY Ripples campaign where EY employees can participate around the world on initiatives in their communities. It could be something on sustainability. It could be kind of, access to education, local community. And there are many, many examples, Jack, around the world. But here's the interesting thing, Jack. For people, and we measure this, for people who participate in these programs, they are higher rated. They get promoted faster. They rate their experience higher in terms of the EY exceptional experience. So here we just provide these platforms and we encourage kind of participation and support. But when people access these, all these other great things happen to the individual. So isn't that interesting that, people want to join an organization that has a purpose, but then you've got to activate that purpose and give people the platform so they can customize it somewhat, right? Because it's not for me to tell them what they should be involved in. But if we're strengthening communities and connecting that to the EY experience, Jack, again, comes back to time and space. We've got to make sure our employees have the time to kind of deliver and do these things. But when they do it, they are so much more successful. And we are a primary beneficiary of that. So isn't that interesting?
Because it makes sense in the sense that, let's say somebody has a role for sustainability or dealing with climate change, and they're really passionate about it. they're going to work harder, and they're going to, because they believe in what they're doing. They're going to put in longer hours, just not for the sake of longer hours, because they really enjoy what they're doing and they feel that they're going to make a big difference in the world. And that's a good thing, so that you're going to get very engaged people. And if you have an engaged workforce, it's hard to stop it, right? It's like it becomes this force.
Yeah, it really is. And again, like we encourage the teams to kind of, develop their own ideas. And just another example, I mean, unfortunately, with climate change, you're seeing all these natural disasters around the world. And so, look, if you're in, with the floods in India a few years ago, the community came together in India to really rally around that cause. Isn't that great? But you get the same impact from an employee engagement, from an employee experience perspective. The employees love the opportunity to do that. They like that it's sponsored by the firm. And it's important that they've got the platform to do that. And I think that does probably have health and wellness benefits, although we haven't proven that out yet. And again, this will be the next iteration. That's why capturing this data and working through these experiences just so, intellectually stimulating, because I think it does help you hopefully solve some of the world's challenges too.
It's great. I know you've given so much insight. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think people would want to know about you, about the company, the organization?
Well, look, as you can tell, I'm an optimist, and I think our organization is too. We have, access to kind of transformation experiences, working with governments, working with our clients, and kind of working with kind of people around the world. I think there's a lot going on right now with respect to technology, and provocatively, we think it's going to help kind of build a better working world. So our efforts are kind of framed at, using this technology to drive productivity increases, hopefully to make the work more meaningful, and then fundamentally providing access to skills, access to experiences, and it starts with access to EY. So we're really proud of that, Jack. And I think, with that mindset, we think we can continue this sustained growth. Of course, our growth comes from the need for our clients to transform their businesses, which is really exciting, but we see no slowdown in that. And again, we'll get through these short-term challenges, and the world will be a better place.
Well, this is fantastic. I love it. I love everything you have to offer. The thing, one piece that I really did like the jungle gym kind of reference, because I think for most people in their careers, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, but like, it seems most people feel that their cohorts, their colleagues, just go straight up. And why am I not just going straight up? Why am I going up, down, up, down, down? And most people, I think, what I've seen from a recruiting perspective and just, in the workforce, most people aren't Mark Zuckerberg, who just like succeed and just go straight up. That's just a small, tiny, infinitesimal, group that just to have it, just everything just broke their way. But for most people, right, it's you try this, it doesn't work. You try something else, it works. So I like that you gave that advice, because you're at a very high level and you've seen it, been there, and you're like, this is what happens. It's not necessarily a straight line. It doesn't always work out the way you want to, but you try to make the best of it. You make iterations, you make changes, you work with it. And I hope that resonates with people. So especially during this time where it's fairly challenging in the job market, so they don't get discouraged, that this is just part of the jungle gym and just getting through it and getting to the other side, right?
Well, it really is, Jack. And when you look back on it, I mean, sometimes I thought I was moving horizontally or even taking a step down. But in hindsight, the experiences I built and the skills I built through doing those things made me a better leader, and ultimately created more opportunities because I had taken the risk to do those things. And so it's not all just about using somebody else's path to say, look, that's a linear path up. That's what success looks like. That's not what this is about. I mean, it's really about, customizing and having kind of a personal plan, understanding what you love to do, and then gaining those skills and experiences. And ultimately, I think with that mindset, you'll end up a different place. I mean, the reality is we hire people today to solve problems that don't yet exist using technology that's not available. So, what's your career advice? And my career advice is get as diverse of experiences as you can. I mean, deep subject matter expertise is still really important, but as you're seeing with the current iteration of technology, that can change with the blink of a switch.
That's fantastic. That's a great way to wrap it up. I love it. And just before we go, how, if people wanted to get in touch with you or the organization or send a resume or whatever it may be, what's the best way to get in touch with you guys?
That's easy. Just go to ey.com. And I would encourage you, just for fun, to kind of upload your resume, play around with that. Let us know what you think about the technology. And, if you are curious and interested in EY, that will lead you to the path kind of directly into our recruiters, and hopefully, as I said, an exceptional experience for all the candidates.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Trey. I really appreciate your time. I think people are going to really benefit from this. This is awesome.
Thanks so much, Jack. It was a pleasure to be with you today.
Thanks.